Our next guest is a talented actor, writer, and producer you know from his work on Boardwalk Empire, Peaky Blinders, Snatch, and The Irishman. He's the co-creator, co-writer, and star of Adolescence, which is streaming on Netflix. Let's take a look.
Did you do it? No. Promise. Promise. Okay. Okay, then everything's gonna be all right then, isn't it?
Please welcome to the show, Stephen Graham, everybody. Welcome, Steve. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to talk about your wonderful show, but I also want to check in, and I assume your flight to the States was easier than the last one.
Yeah, this time it was.
Yeah. You had a bad situation the last time.
It was a hell of an experience. Look, I'm of a certain age, do you know what I mean? You're a gentleman like myself.
Yeah.
If you don't know, once you get over like 45, we tend to go to the toilet quite a lot of times at night, don't we?
Yeah.
But you can have a general procedure, which is uninvasive, and you get put asleep, and they put a, what would you call it in America?
Just whatever word you want to use.
Whatever word you want to use. I'll leave it to your imagination. Anyway, this tube gets inserted into, and then push, like this big load of steam goes in, and you end up with a slightly enlarged prostate, but, you know, within 3 months or 4 months, then it should be less trips to the toilet.
And you're a busy guy.
I'm a busy guy, you know, so in that respect, everything was fine, and I knew I had to come over to America, so a bit of time went by, and I'm on the plane, and everything had been fine to this point. And I'm on the plane, and I'm drinking some water, and, you know, I'm keeping hydrated. So then, after about 2.5 hours into the flight, I go to the toilet. And I can't wait. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel right.
Right. Because you definitely need to.
So
you have to. Yeah.
Well, I knew I had to, and then silly Stephen thought, oh, well, if I go back to my seat and I just keep drinking water, at some point it will happen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that seems like, yeah.
Yeah. So I went back to my seat. I asked for more water. We're 3.5 hours into the flight now, and then I goes to the toilet, tries to go to the toilet, and I'm there, and it's not coming out. But you know, when you're pressing, you know, when you're dying to go, that situation, and I had to look down, it was like a little pregnant belly.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, anyway, long story short, all of a sudden, I went, but it was just pure blood.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, it was very scary. And I couldn't stop this trajectory of blood, and I was like, oh, and I'm having a slight panic attack.
A slight?
Yeah. A slight panic attack. I'm very British, still, you know, so I've got myself together, and I'm cleaning it up. I'm cleaning the mess up.
Oh,
no.
You are so British.
Well, yeah, and you don't want the next person to come in and go, oh, my God, what's happening? So I'm doing it, and then all of a sudden I look out the window, and I'm about to cry. I'm having a bit of a moment, and I look out the window, and all of a sudden I just get this overwhelming feeling of calmness. And I meditate, and I kind of hit that state, but it was really peaceful. And I remembered there was a doctor on board. Because, you know, when you get on the bus to go to your plane?
Yeah.
I just took a selfie with this doctor. He told me he was a doctor anyway, so I'm thinking, I'm all right, there's a doctor on board. So anyway, I told the woman this embarrassing situation. She put it over, we had to check with air traffic control and blah, blah, blah. Next minute, the doctor comes round the corner, and he goes, Stephen. And I'm like, Doc, hello. And I explained the situation, and he had another friend with him who was a surgeon. So I'm there, I explain, he's like, okay. And the surgeon, Dr. Haji, says, okay, we can work this out. He gets the emergency kit, they sterilise the whole area. You know what, on a plane, the way you go to the posh seats, which is that way, and you go to normal seats, which is that way. So there's a lounge in the middle, and they sterilise the area, and basically there's a catheter in the box.
I hope they asked everyone to leave the lounge.
Well, there was no public there,
okay.
but the staff were there. So Claire, who was the air stewardess, and she was the manager, and all their cabin crew were in the room as well. And they're holding curtains at the exit. Wow. And Dr. Haji asked me would I lower my pants. So I drop my kecks, I get on the couch, And he performs a catheter operation there and then.
And fine?
Well, the relief was unbelievable, as
Wow.
you can imagine. But it was a little clot that had got stuck behind, well, not little, but, you know, it was
Yeah.
a clot that had got stuck behind my urethra tract.
But then you were fine, but like when you walked off the plane, fine.
Well, then I went to the toilet, and it was one of the nicest experiences me and my penis.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean it in that right way.
Yeah.
You know, one of the finest experiences I've
Yeah.
ever had with my member.
Yeah, that's great.
Apart from pleasurable, I mean. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was that. That was that, and I went in, and I came running in like a child who'd just been. Remember when you trained your kids to go to the toilet?
Yeah.
And that face they'd come running out with. So I came out to the cabin
Well,
crew and I was
actually-
like, I've done it. And they,
Well,
they all clapped. Yeah.
we don't have to describe the face. You took a photo, and that's the face.
And Dr.
yeah,
Dr. Ola and Dr. Haji, they were the two
Yeah.
wonderful
Look at those
people
guys.
who performed the surgery.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
This show, Adolescence, is absolutely fantastic. And, you know, it's about a very heavy subject. But I also, I was saying this to you backstage. The 4 episodes, each one is a one-shot take.
Yeah.
And, you know, Netflix put up this great, like, 15-minute documentary about the making of it. And it must have been, and I know it's a heavy subject and we'll get into it, but it must have been sort of joyful to be with all these people who obviously love film as a craft and pulling off what just was this incredible act of choreography and skill.
It was a really unique experience, do you know what I mean? We'd done a film, me, Phil Barantini, our wonderful director, and Matt Lewis, who was our DOP. We'd done a little short, and then we made a feature called Boiling Point. So we had that kind of proof of concept. But this time we really wanted to push it, do you know what I mean? And the process of how we work, you spend a whole week rehearsing with Jack Thorne, our wonderful writer. You spend a week rehearsing like a little theatre company, and then everybody gets to understand the text, and you really feel a part of the process. You know what it's like back in the day, those like small theatre companies. So it was that lovely unit that we had. And then the next week, we do the choreography of the shot. So we spend the whole week getting it into your muscle memory and really understanding where the camera's going to be and how we're going to move about. And then the next week after that, so you have 3 weeks, and then the final week, we just go for it.
Yeah.
We shoot.
And how many times... so because I watched the documentary, I know, for example, the first episode, I think it said you used the second take.
Yeah.
But you didn't stop after the second take. You must have kept shooting it.
Well, I wanted to go home. I said, look, we've got it. We're never going to get it better than
Yeah.
that. But then, you know, Netflix, thank you very much, are paying our wages. So
Yeah.
we kept on shooting.
But you did know after the second one we got it.
I knew after the second one that we had it, only because I think my son, our Alfie, was with
Yeah.
me on that day. And it was the first day. And I just knew there was something special about the quality that we had within that second take.
I mean, you have so many actors, all you know, with a lot of dialogue. A lot of times, you know, technical dialogue. A lot of it is, you know, just the intake at a police station, stuff you kind of can't improvise or riff on.
Yeah.
Were there moments where, you know, you realize, oh, something just went wrong and this is an unusable take, and that you would stop, or would you just sort of plow through the whole
When you
hour?
plow through, you know yourself, that kind of spontaneity
Yeah.
sometimes of that live performance. Do you know what I mean? So you have that kind of reality and that energy that you have when you're in theatre. And you know that you have to, no matter what, get to the end of the play. And in this same respect, we knew that there was elements of that within this, but it was the technical element that got us from A to B, but it was also that we had lots of spontaneity within the cast as well.
It is a story about a father and you know, his son, and his son's been accused of a horrible crime. And it is not a whodunit. I've heard you describe it as a whydunit. What about it drew you to wanting to tell this kind of story?
There was a couple of horrific cases in England, one in particular, a young girl, where I'm from, a place called Liverpool. I think she was 13, and she was stabbed to death by a young boy. He was 15, and they are young boys, they're not men, do you know what I mean? And there was a collection, there was like 3 of him and his friends. And I just thought, what kind of a society are we living in where this kind of thing's happening? And there was a couple of incidents as well. There was a young trans girl who was lured into a park in Leeds, and she was stabbed to death. And there've been other incidences as well, but those 2 incidents were the kind of thing that it was the catalyst for my thinking. And it just kind of hit me. I wanted to tell this story, but I wanted to have a look at it from a different perspective. And not blame anyone, but just say, look, maybe we're all accountable. There's a beautiful saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And it's kind of, you know, look, maybe as parents we're responsible, as the school system, maybe that's accountable. Society in itself, maybe we're all slightly, you know, accountable, the community. And today, something that we never had social media when we were kids. So to go back to that kind of point, if I was in my room, I was either in my room drawing pictures or playing with my Star Wars figures, or remember the Casio keyboards?
Sure.
So I was doing one of those things. But today, when our children are in their bedrooms, there's huge pros to the internet. Of course there is. It's changed our lives. It's changed the world as we know it. But there's also a lot of cons. And I just think that kind of, you know, we need to be mindful and try and communicate with our children. My wife said it brilliantly, Hannah. She said the most beautiful thing when we were making this. She said, hopefully we'll create an opportunity for parents to open the bedroom doors and talk to their children, because that's the one thing that my character, Eddie, didn't really do. And he realises that at the end of the piece. Maybe I should have been in here talking to my boy and seeing what was going on.
It's incredible to make something with so much integrity behind it that then is being watched by so many people. And it is a really cool show to talk to people about. I mean, everybody I know has been watching it. I want to, before we leave, you have another very cool role coming up. You were in the Bruce Springsteen biopic. You're playing Bruce Springsteen's dad.
Yeah, that was a huge honour.
And you've gotten to become friends with Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful kind of, you know, it's...
I was gonna. Here's a photo of you guys. Why don't you tell me? But I am a little worried based on this photo that you've had another surgery.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't like that.
All right, good.
No.
You're like,
no,
this guy's the doctor. This is all right.
No, it wasn't like that at all. I took him to a really lovely little quaint restaurant in Yorkshire. And it was just beautiful. Look, I never imagined that I'd suddenly developed this wonderful friendship with a 75-year-old man who just so happens to be this huge.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just a little mixed-race kid from a block of flats in Kirby.
With the pressure of picking a restaurant to take Bruce Springsteen to, I would not want.
Hannah, my missus.
Oh, she picked it.
She's unbelievable.
Okay,
She's
gotcha.
Brilliant at things.
So
like
you
that.
said I got a problem. You have to solve it for me.
Well, that's kind of how my life is, with Hannah.
Yeah, I got one of those too.
You got the
I'm
same
very
one?
lucky.
We've done all right.
Yeah, we have.
Way above our station.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God, I'll be lost without her. Well, you've seen what happens when I'm on a plane. Do you know what I mean? Without her. But she's magnificent, and she found this really beautiful, quaint little restaurant just in a little village, and we went, and he was blown away by the quality of the food.
That's great. That's all you can ask. Yeah. I mean, you know, Bruce Springsteen does not, you know, no faint praise from Bruce Springsteen.
No,
yeah.
and he was like this. He was like, "Oh my God, this is unreal! Like, I thought we were gonna have like cheeseburger and fries." I was like, "No, we're having quaint sausage rolls and a little bit of pickle." Yeah, and it was lovely. It was really nice.
Hey, congratulations on everything. I'm so happy to finally meet you. Just been a big fan for a long time. That was wonderful. Stephen Graham, everybody, Adolescents, streaming on Netflix. We'll be right back.